Hey everyone. Today, we're going to take a look at the Presbytery's conflict of interest policy. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Policies can sound a little dry, maybe even restrictive, but I want us to look at this differently. Not as a set of rules, but as a guide, a tool that's actually here to help all of us serve with more confidence and integrity.
And right off the bat, let's get one thing straight. Conflicts of interest are totally normal. Seriously. Especially in a community like ours that's so interconnected. We're full of amazing people with incredible gifts, deep relationships, and all sorts of resources. And that's a huge strength. So this whole conversation isn't about being suspicious. It's about being smart and thoughtful as we navigate the complexities that naturally come with being such a vibrant community. So, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll talk about why this is even a thing in our community. Then, we'll get clear on what a conflict actually is. After that, we'll look at the core values that ground this whole policy. Then we'll get practical and see how it works day to day. And finally, we'll tie it all together to how we build trust as a community.
All right, let's start with that big picture. Because seeing this as a simple reality of a healthy, thriving community is really the key to the whole thing.
When you strip it all down, this policy is really about protection. It's here to protect the integrity of our shared mission, for sure. But just as important, it's here to protect us, the people who generously give our time and our talents. So think of it less like a rule book and more like a set of guardrails, a support system that helps all of us handle tricky situations with real grace and clarity.
Okay, so now that we get the why, let's really nail down the what. What exactly is a conflict of interest?
Here it is, plain and simple. A conflict of interest is any situation where a private interest, whether it's financial, a family relationship, you name it, could get in the way of making a totally objective decision for the presbytery. And listen, that phrase right there, or be perceived to compromise, that is absolutely critical. Because when we're talking about trust, perception is reality. It's not just about what is true, but what could look like a problem.
Now this slide is fantastic because it makes it all so real. On the left, you see stuff that, it can really damage trust, like pushing your cousin's company even though they're more expensive. But now, look to the right, the exact same situation handled with integrity. You don't hide the relationship, you disclose it. You step back from the vote. See? The issue isn't having the relationship, it's all about how you handle it with transparency. That's the game changer.
It's also so important to know that this policy isn't just some piece of administrative busywork. It's actually deeply rooted in our shared faith and who we are.
You know, at the very heart of this is a foundational teaching from Jesus, and this isn't just about money. The original word for wealth here is really about anything you give your loyalty to. It's a powerful reminder that our number one commitment has to be to God and our shared work, not clouded by other competing interests.
And you can see how that core principle flows right into our own tradition. The Confession of 1967 reminds us that the way we structure ourselves is designed to be a safeguard. It's there to protect the mission of the church from being hijacked by personal ambition or outside pressures. So this policy, it's really just a practical way we live out that core value.
So we've got the why and the what. Now let's get into the how. What does this framework actually look like when the rubber meets the road?
The policy lays out 7 key guidelines, and they really create a complete common-sense framework. We can basically think of them in 2 groups. First, the proactive stuff we do to get ahead of any issues, and second, the responsive actions we take if and when a potential conflict comes up.
So the whole framework kicks off with these proactive steps. It starts with simple education, just making sure we're all on the same page. Next up is disclosure, which is just a simple, yearly heads-up about any affiliations that could be seen as a conflict. And finally, documentation, which means we just make a note of those disclosures in the minutes. Super straightforward, super transparent.
Then you have the responsive actions, what to do when a potential conflict is actually on the table. The main one is recusal, and all that means is you politely step away from that specific discussion and vote. The policy also calls for transparency in things like hiring or signing contracts, getting multiple bids. And finally, there's oversight, which means we have a designated group that can offer guidance and make sure we're applying the policy fairly for everyone.
Okay, and this final guideline, it is absolutely crucial. This process is never, ever about public callouts or judgment. It's a process that is always handled with care. Every conversation is confidential, it's respectful, and it's approached with pastoral sensitivity. We're always honoring the people and the relationships that make our community what it is.
So let's pull it all together. What's the big payoff for embracing this framework? Well, it's about building a community that is stronger, more resilient, and built on a solid foundation of trust.
So what's the bottom line here? When we all commit to this together, We build so much more trust in our leadership. We make decisions that are fair and transparent. We protect the very people who are giving their all to serve. And we put up a shield around the mission we all care about so deeply. It really does make the whole community stronger.
And it's so important to remember this isn't some rigid, one-size-fits-all rulebook that gets handed down from on high. It's a living document. It's a template, a resource that our own sessions and committees can and should tweak and adapt for their own specific situations. That's what keeps it relevant and helpful.
And that really brings us to the final and maybe the most important question. This isn't just about following a policy. It's an invitation to every single one of us. How can we, personally and together, use these guidelines not just to avoid problems, but as a tool to help us serve God and each other with even more integrity, more transparency, and more care? Now that's a question worth thinking about.